Hello everyone, this is Monali Mishra from KP Classes, and today in this video we are going to discuss about the syllabus of JEE Mains Paper 2. Now the pattern for JEE Mains Paper 2 has already been discussed on another video, so make sure you can go and see that video so that you get more detail about how the pattern of this exam is. But here we'll just discuss about specifically about the syllabus. Now, if we look into the syllabus, the overall syllabus is basically divided into your three parts. Part 1 is your mathematics section. Part 2 is your general aptitude section and part 3 is your drawing section. These two are basically your computer based, that is online format test, and this is your pen and paper format test. Now let's try to look into what is basically the syllabus for each part, that is the official syllabus that is given to us. So for mathematics, these are the topics. You can basically pause the video and see these topics, what these are. These are something that basically, even correlate with something that you're already studying in class 10. You have permutations and combinations, complex number, matrices, sets, relations, functions, all these things. So you're already studying this in class 12. So these are something that you are already preparing while you're also maybe preparing for your paper 1. So we'll not get into the details of this. What we will get into the details of is the general aptitude section and the drawing section. So in the general aptitude, the topics are listed down. First, let's try to look into each topic one by one and understand what each topic basically demands from us. First, they say awareness of persons, places, buildings and materials. That means what? You should be aware of different types of people, that is obviously famous people, architects very specifically, places, that is places around the world, can be, any kind of very important plaza. Maybe, one of the places can be Central Park, that's in New York. You should be aware just by looking at the plan, or maybe, one of the scenarios, very important scenarios, you should be able to basically recognize this places and buildings, very important and common buildings, or even statues as well. For example, Statue of Liberty, or if we talk about building, Leaning Tower of Pisa or the Colosseum in Rome. These are some of the very important buildings around the world that you should be able to recognize just by looking at the picture. So you may have certain images showing different kind of buildings, and they may ask you, which of these buildings show the Colosseum of Rome. So you have to take the option out of those. Materials, that is what are the different types of materials. You have different types of building materials. Basically you have maybe you have stone, you have a thatched roof. So these kind of, every different material has different kind of a texture to it. So you should be able to just by looking at it, you should be able to recognize the different types of material. Apart from that, objects and textures related to architecture and built environment. So every building, every built environment, and as well as the natural environment around us has some kind of a texture. For example, the texture of the wall of the building will be comparatively different from that of a tree maybe. Or even if I talk about textures, maybe a plastered wall will be comparatively smoother as compared to a exposed brick wall. So just by looking at it, you should be able to recognize the difference in the textures of different kind of materials or different kind of buildings or any kind of built aspect. This is what is basically demanded in your first point. Next point is visualizing different sides of three-dimensional objects, that is 3D objects. So to understand this particular point in a much more better way, let's try to look at one of the questions that was asked. See what this question says. 3D figure shows the view of an object. Identify the correct view amongst the given answer. So in the question, what will happen is that you will be given a 3D image, that is a three-dimensional image, and you will be given an arrow. Can you see this arrow? So basically, they are asking you how will this particular 3D shape look when you view it from this side, that is from this point. So these are the four options. Out of this, you have to select the right option, that is how will this particular 3D image look when you look at it from this point. That is, you will be given a 3D object, and by looking at the 3D object, you have to basically, visualize, imagine in your mind, how will it look if I view it maybe from the front or side or wherever the arrow has been given. So basically, if you just go back to the previous slide, Visualizing different sides of 3D objects. So we are looking at the 3D object from various sides, and based on that we select the options. Then next point we have is visualizing 3D objects from two-dimensional drawings. That is, a two-dimensional drawing will be given and they'll ask you how will this particular drawing look in 3D. For example, let's look at another question to get a better understanding. See, what is the question say? What does the question says? Problem figure shows top view of an object. Identify the correct elevation amongst the answer. Elevation is what? Basically how the building looks from, or how any object looks from the front. Basically that's your elevation. So a plan, or a top view is given. Top view is what? Basically your plan. So a top view is given and they are telling that this is how a building looks from the top, or any figure looks from the top, and they're asking you how will it appear from the front. So you have four options. You have to look at this, you have to visualize it in your mind, and based on that you have to select the right choice. So these are the kind of questions that are asked in these two type of topics. Either you'll be given a 3D shape and you have to identify the 2D factor of it or 2D part of it, or you will be given a 2D shape and you have to visualize how will it look in a 3D form. And the last part, that is analytical reasoning, mental ability, visual, numerical and verbal. This is basically your aptitude in a very simple term. If I have to basically break it down, this is your aptitude. Now in aptitude you may have visual aptitude. Visual aptitudes are what? In which you have certain shapes. You may have three shapes or three patterns, and they ask you what is the fourth pattern. So you may have some kind of boxes, and you may have some patterns in these boxes, and they tell you what will be the, based on this pattern, what will be the fourth part. Or they may give you some kind of numbers, 1 2 3 4, what will be the fifth number. Similarly, in numerical, you have numerical aptitude question, maybe, based on your age, like, your father was twice as old as you. What will be his age 10 years later? Something like this. Or clock questions, or age questions, or, relationship questions. These are basic aptitude mathematical questions. And finally, verbal part, in which you have basically basic English questions. You may be asked synonyms or antonyms or meanings of certain words, and these are basically an aptitude based question. So this is your general aptitude part. Next part is our drawing section. So in drawing section, what do they expect from you, or what kind of questions you may be asked? Both will be discussing. First, what they are asking is three-dimensional perception. That is your 3D perspective. Maybe, if you are standing in the middle of a road and you have buildings, and there is a road that is basically extending in front of you, and you have buildings on both sides of the road, how will the road appear? Obviously, the buildings at the front will be comparatively larger as compared to that in the back. As the buildings will keep on going, they will reduce in size. So that should be evident in your sketch. That kind of a perception should be evident in your sketch. Now, if you're looking at something from the top, again, basically the scale will change, the view will change. So that is called your 3D perception. A very in detail, this is not something that you may be a lot familiar with right now, but in detail for this, we also will be launching a 51-day course in which all these things will be covered in detail. What is perception, what is perspective, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point perspectives, all in detail will be covered in 51 days, and this course will be available to you absolutely ad free on the YouTube channel of KP Classes. So you can wait for that particular course. Also you can refer to that course to understand more about these concepts. Understanding the scale and proportion of objects. That is, when you look at a particular thing, you have to basically imagine when you're looking at a thing, obviously the scale or the size of a car will be smaller than that of a building. Or maybe if you have a 2 or 3 story high building, the size of a tree will be smaller than that of a building. So you have to, basically put it out in the sketch also. When you are sketching or when you're drawing this particular thing, this should be evident in your scale. Your building should be in scale with your surroundings. The other elements, maybe there's a person walking, that should be in scale. It should not look that the building is 3-story height and the person is maybe half the size of the building. So that all things are basically talked about in scale. So that is something that you have to be very conscious about when you are drawing. Building forms, what kind of building forms are there? Elements, color, texture and harmony and contrast. So these are basically different kind of elements and principles of design. Again, this is a topic that we will be covering in our course. So when you are drawing, these elements should be evident. There should be harmony, there should be texture, like the shadow area should be shaded darker compared to the light the areas that are well lit. So all those things, contrast, texture, all those things should be evident in your sketch. That is basically what they are trying to see. For example, they may they may give you a very simple, concept, or a very simple question, that draw a sketch of you. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a road and draw the sketch that you are able to see. So in that case, you have to draw the lighter areas, the shaded areas. So you have to bring out all that textural differences in your drawing. The scale, the proportion, everything should be, basically in line in your drawing. Then second type of thing that they basically look for is design and drawing of geometrical or abstract shapes and patterns. So basically patterns, you have to create certain shapes and patterns. So they may tell you, just by, okay, there is a particular, you have to design a curtain for a girl's room. So just by using curves, that is, this kind of shape, just by using S curves or some other kind of curves, design the entire pattern on the curtain. So you have, in that cases, you have to basically design the curtain, or design the pattern on the curtain just by using this curve. So how do you do that? So just by using, abstract patterns and shape, you have to create some kind of composition that is visually pleasing. That means looks good when you're looking at it. So these are basically, when you will become an architect, there is also a part of it which is called, you may also be involved in logo designing. So when you design logos, you basically use different kind of shapes, different kind of, abstract curves or lines or any kind of 3D shapes to create a logo. So that is why you should be well aware how a composition looks visually pleasing, that is, looks good to the eyes. Your third point is basically creating 2D and 3D compositions using given shapes and forms. So let me explain it to you by giving an example of a question. Maybe there's a question that just by using a cube of maybe 3 by 3, 3 by 3 by 3 size, 3 centimeter by 3 centimeter by 3 centimeter size, and a cuboid 3 by 2 by 4 centimeter size, create a composition which looks visually pleasing, use colors to give some texture and depth to it. So here you will be asked to use 3D shapes, cube, cuboid, cylinder, cone, and with those 3D shapes, you have to again create some kind of a three-dimensional composition. Composition is what basically when you create an entire, a collection of, or a pattern just by using different kind of shapes. So again, here what happens, here you are using 2D shapes and here you are using 3D shapes to create a composition. So again, a lot of things you have to keep in mind. You have to keep in mind about whether it's balanced, whether there's harmony. So all of these are something that you are going to learn in the courses as well. And finally, we have something called, sketching scenes and activities from the memory of urbanscape. This is basically, you might be asked to, imagine the scene of a kite festival and sketch it. Or imagine the scene of a rural village and sketch it. Or imagine the scene of a marketplace in the evening and sketch it. So you have to sketch something from your memory. Based on your memory, based on your imagination, you have to sketch out something. So mostly we have two questions in this section. One is mostly this kind of a question where you have to sketch some kind of a scene, maybe a urbanscape. Urbanscape is basically a scene from the city, or a rural scape, or you may be given some kind of composition. So these are the things that we basically talk about in drawing. So this is the entire course, basically entire syllabus that is given to us officially by, the NTA, that is the National Testing Agency, for this paper 2, and I have discussed with you throughout. You can, if you have any other query, you can drop it in the comment box below. Apart from that, make sure to like and subscribe the channel to stay updated with more new and recent launchings. Thank you very much.